I am Lewis Hayes. I am 71 years old and my life was built on two things: my late wife Althea and the work of my hands. I flew to Charlotte to visit my son Corey. He said he wanted to take me out to celebrate. He took me to a dark local pub that smelled of stale beer and disinfectant. Not my scene. Corey stepped outside to take a work call. The second the door swung shut, the bartender grabbed my arm. His grip was strong. He didn't look at me like a customer. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. He leaned in, his voice urgent, and told me something that turned the blood in my veins to ice. I knew I had to get out. Not back to the table. Out. I went straight to the men's room, my heart hammering against my ribs, and locked the door. I climbed out the filthy bathroom window, my old knees screaming in protest. I fell into the alley, scraping my hands on the gravel, and started following my own son. 5 minutes later, I saw him meeting my daughter-in-law, Brittany, outside a Bank of America. They didn't just hug. They kissed. A deep, desperate kiss. They were smiling, radiant, and I knew in that exact moment my life was over. 4 hours earlier, I, Lewis Hayes, landed at Charlotte Douglas International. I felt every one of my 71 years as I dragged a single suitcase that held what was left of 50 years of my life. My son Corey and my daughter-in-law Brittany were waiting at baggage claim. Brittany's smile was too wide. It didn't reach her eyes. Her hug was too tight, all sharp angles and expensive perfume as stiff as a board. "Dad," she chirped, her voice a full octave too high. "You're here. You timed this perfectly." I sat in the back of their pristine BMW X5, the leather seats cold against my back. I felt like paid cargo, not a father. "Timed what perfectly?" I asked. My voice sounded rusty. I hadn't used it much since the funeral. Corey glanced at me in the rearview mirror. My son, 42 years old, a successful fund manager looking like he stepped right out of a finance magazine, perfect suit, perfect haircut. "Just, Dad, to get a fresh start. We've been so worried about you." Brittany, who is white with the kind of blonde hair that costs a fortune to maintain, turned in her seat. That smile was still plastered on her face like a mask. "We were so worried, Lewis. You all alone in that big house in Atlanta, rattling around." "I sold the house," I said flatly. "And the workshop." The silence that filled that luxury car was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the faint click of Brittany's turn signal. "Oh," she finally said. Her smile faltered just for a second. "Well, so, you've finished arranging things." Arranging things. Their house in the South Park neighborhood was too big. It was a monument to beige. I'd only been here twice before in the 10 years they'd lived in it. My wife Althea, God rest her soul, never liked this place. "It's cold, Lewis," she'd said on our first visit, rubbing her arms. "It's like a showroom, not a home. There's no spirit in it, no life." Now, standing in the echoing marble foyer, I knew exactly what she meant. Everything was polished empty. The furniture looked like no one had ever actually sat on it. It was a house built for impressing, not for living. Brittany grabbed for my suitcase handle the moment I stepped inside. "Let me get that for you. You must be exhausted after arranging things in Atlanta." There was that phrase again. It wasn't a question. It wasn't sympathy. It felt like a code. It meant I just buried my wife of 45 years, Althea, 6 months ago. And I just closed the sale on our family home and the woodworking shop I built with my bare hands. I have $1.2 million sitting in a savings account. Corey knew it. He had insisted on helping me review the final closing documents over the phone, asking questions about wire transfers and account totals. I thought he was just being a responsible son. "I can carry my own bag," I grunted, holding the handle tight. A 71-year-old carpenter's hand still has strength. I hadn't lost that. Brittany pulled her hand back, her nails clicking. Corey put his hand on my shoulder. The touch was light, almost dismissive, not the hug a son gives his grieving father. "Take it easy, Dad. Get settled in. Tonight I'm taking you out. We're going to celebrate." Celebrate. That word hit me like a slap. My wife, the woman I loved since I was 20, the woman who held me together, was gone. I just sold my entire life, my home, my soul in Atlanta. What in the hell were we celebrating? The first real tendril of unease, cold and sharp, twisted in my gut. I was tired, I was grieving, and I did not want to celebrate. I just wanted quiet, but I nodded. What else could I do? I was a guest in this cold, empty house. I nodded and let them lead me upstairs to a guest room that smelled like lemon polish and complete disinterest. "This place is lively," I said. I had to practically shout over the thumping bass of the music. Corey had driven us to a dark, crowded pub. The music was some kind of modern rock that sounded like angry noise, just a wall of static and screaming. It smelled of spilled beer, disinfectant, and fry oil. Corey clapped me on the back harder than necessary. "Relax, Dad. This is the best pub in the area. Live a little, meet some people." He ordered a craft beer for me, an IPA, and some ridiculous pink-colored cocktail for himself that came in a tall glass. It looked like window cleaner. The place was dark, all exposed brick and flickering neon signs. It was filled wall to wall with young people in their 20s and 30s shouting into their phones, laughing too loudly. It was nothing like the quiet, warm jazz clubs Althea and I used to go to back in Atlanta. This was noise. This was chaos. I took a sip of the beer. It was incredibly bitter. Corey wasn't looking at me. He was checking his phone. Constantly. He'd set it on the bar screen up. Every 30 seconds it would light up. He'd snatch it, type a furious reply, and slam it back down. The muscles in his jaw were tight. "Everything all right, son?" I asked, leaning in. Yeah, he said, too fast, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Just work. Things are crazy. Big merger. Very high stress." He took a long pull of his pink drink, draining half of it. He was jittery. I'd known this boy his whole life. This wasn't work stress. This was, "I'm about to get caught" stress. But caught for what? Just then his phone buzzed again, this time with a call. He snatched it up, looked at the screen, and his face went pale. "Damn it," he hissed. He stood up so fast he almost knocked his own drink over. "It's my boss, the main client on the merger. I have to take this." He pointed a finger at me, a gesture he knew I hated. "You stay right here, Dad. I'll be right back. Just don't go anywhere. Order another beer if you want." And then he was gone, pushing through the crowd toward the front door, disappearing into the night. He left me alone. A 71-year-old black man in a plaid shirt stranded in a sea of screaming 20-somethings. I sat there for 5, maybe 10 minutes. The music got louder. I felt the sheer, crushing pointlessness of this whole trip. Why was I here to be babysat at a bar while my son took work calls? I watched the bartender. He was a big guy, maybe 40, muscular, with a faded white scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He worked with a quiet, no-nonsense efficiency, but I noticed him glancing at me. It wasn't a friendly, checking on the customer look. It was a calculating look, an anxious look, a look of pity. He moved down to my end of the bar, grabbing a clean rag to wipe down a counter that was already spotless. He worked his way toward me methodically. "Beer okay?" he asked. His voice was low, gravelly. He didn't seem to care about the beer. "It's fine," I said. He kept wiping his eyes on the rag. Then he stopped. He looked over his shoulder at the door Corey had disappeared through. Then he looked back at me, his eyes locking onto mine. He leaned in close, so close I could smell the faint scent of sanitizer on his apron. "Sorry to be weird," he said, his voice barely a whisper over the music. "But are you Lewis Hayes, Corey Hayes' father?" My heart gave a strange, hard thump. It felt like a fist clenched inside my chest. "I am. How'd you know?" His eyes darted around the bar, checking who was near. "Look, my name is Mike. This is just my night job. By day, I'm a notary. My office is just down the street next to the laundromat." I just nodded, confused. My mind was blank. What did this have to do with anything? Mike spoke fast, his words tumbling out like bricks. "Yesterday, your son Corey, he came into my office. He was frantic. He had a stack of documents, a durable power of attorney." My brow furrowed. "A power of attorney I never signed." "He said you did." Mike interrupted, his voice tight with anger and regret. "He had it all. He said you just had a mild stroke. He said your right hand trembles so bad you can't sign your name or manage your own finances anymore." The blood in my veins turned to ice. The noise of the bar, the screaming music, it all faded away. There was only Mike's voice. I instinctively looked down at my right hand, the hand of a carpenter, calloused, scarred, and 71 years old, but it was holding my beer glass perfectly steady. Mike followed my gaze. "Exactly," he whispered. His eyes filled with a terrible understanding. "That's why I recognized you. Your hand is rock solid." He leaned in even closer, his face grim. "He said you wanted him to manage all your assets, especially the money from your house sale. He said you were no longer of sound mind." no longer of sound mind. Rage, hot and blinding, choked me. It was so sudden, so total, I couldn't breathe. Mike kept going, desperate to get it all out. The papers looked legit, they really did. He even had a letter from some doctor, a Dr. Miller. He was in a huge rush, said you were in the hospital, and he needed it notarized immediately to pay your medical bills. He was so convincing. God help me, I believed him. I'm an idiot. I notarized it. I stamped it. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was like a steel trap. But now I see you here, drinking a beer, talking. You're perfectly fine. Man, something is dead wrong here. Your son is lying to you. He's trying to steal your money. My mind just stopped. It was like a circuit breaker flipped. Stroke, not sound mind. Every piece clicked into place with a sickening thud. The fake wide-eyed welcome at the airport. The cold, empty house. Brittany's constant coded phrase, arranging things. Corey's sudden insistence on a celebration. His nervous, jittery energy. The constant phone checking. It wasn't a visit. It was an ambush. It was all a lie. A sick, cruel, elaborate play to steal everything I had left. The money Althea and I had saved. The money from my shop. My life. Just as that septic realization flooded my system, the front door of the pub opened, letting in a slice of cold night air and the sound of traffic. Corey walked back in. His face had changed. The nervous, jittery look was gone. He looked calm, resolved. He scanned the bar, saw me, and that smile returned. The same wide, empty, polished smile Brittany had at the airport. It was the smile of a predator that had just cornered its prey. "Dad?" he said, walking toward me, his voice booming with a false hearty cheer that made my skin crawl. "You look pale. You okay? That beer too strong for you?" Mike had already backed away, disappearing to the other end of the bar, wiping glasses, his face a perfect mask of neutrality. He had done his part. He had passed the warning. Now I was on my own. I couldn't breathe. The air in the pub was thick, suffocating. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't be near him. I felt a sudden visceral terror. I was a 71-year-old man, and for the first time in my entire life, I was terrified of my own son. What was his plan to get me drunk and make me sign something else? To drive me back to that beige prison of a house and lock me in the guest room? To tell Brittany, it's done? I stood up so fast the heavy bar stool screeched on the tile floor, a sound that cut through the music. Corey flinched. I clutched my stomach, putting on the only show I could think of. I doubled over, letting out a cough, a dry, racking sound. The food, I choked out, forcing a grimace. Something's wrong. Need the bathroom. Now. I stumbled away, not looking back. I could feel Corey's eyes boring into my back. "Dad!" "You want me to help?" his voice called after me. It was dripping with that fake saccharine concern. I just waved a hand dismissively over my shoulder and pushed through the door to the men's room. I slammed the lock. The click echoed in the small, filthy, tiled room. I leaned against the sink, gripping the porcelain edges until my knuckles turned white. I stared at my own face in the cracked, graffiti-covered mirror. My eyes were wide with panic and disbelief. This isn't happening. This is Corey. This is my boy. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The boy I put through college. But Mike's voice echoed in my head. "He said you were no longer of sound mind. He's trying to steal your money." Knock, knock. I jumped so hard I nearly yelled. "Dad, you okay in there?" It was Corey right outside the door. His voice was muffled, but the impatience was clear. I'm fine," I yelled, my voice cracking. "Just give me a minute. Stomach's killing me." "You sure? You sounded really bad out here. Maybe I should come in, make sure you didn't fall. Old guys like you fall easily." He was testing the handle. I could hear it rattle. Then I saw the knob turn back and forth. He was cornering me. He was trapping me in a bar bathroom. My fear turned instantly to rage, a pure, cold rage I hadn't felt since I was a young man. The rage of a father betrayed, the rage of a man being hunted. My eyes darted around the tiny room. One stall, one urinal, one sink, and one door. The door he was standing behind. I couldn't go back out that door. He was waiting. And then I saw it. On the far wall above the toilet tank, a small, grimy bathroom window. The kind they put in basements, frosted glass, maybe 2 feet wide. It was meant for ventilation, not escape. I was 71 years old. My knees ached from arthritis. The idea was insane. Knock, knock, knock. This time the knock was hard. A full-fisted pound, impatient, angry. "Dad, open the door. Stop being stubborn." Stubborn. That was it. That was the word that lit the fuse. The same word he used when I told him not to major in finance. The same word he used when I told him Brittany was a bad match. The fear vanished, replaced by pure cold adrenaline. I was a carpenter. I built things. I could unbuild this trap. I stepped onto the toilet seat, my dress shoes slipping on the porcelain. I grabbed the metal window frame. I threw all my weight into the rusty latch. It groaned, fought me, and then popped open with a metallic snap. I shoved the window. It swung outward with a high-pitched squeal. Cool night air smelling of rain and dumpsters hit my face. "Dad, what was that noise?" Corey yelled. He was pounding on the door now. "Open this door!" I didn't hesitate. I hoisted myself up, jamming my knee onto the toilet paper dispenser, which cracked under my weight. I thrust my shoulders and chest through the narrow, filthy opening. I felt a sharp pain as my side scraped against the rough metal frame, tearing my shirt. For one heart-stopping second, I was stuck. My hips were too wide. "I'm calling the manager, Dad. I'll have him open this door." I roared, a grunt of pure exertion, and twisted my body. I pushed off the wall with my foot, kicking myself free. And then I was falling. I landed hard on a pile of wet, flattened cardboard boxes in the alley. The impact shot a blinding pain up my leg and into my hip, but I didn't care. I could hear Corey shouting inside the bathroom. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the fire in my knee, and I ran. I ran out of the alley, I ran from the bar, I ran from my son, and I ran toward the horrifying truth that was waiting for me in the dark. I'm Lewis Hayes. I'm 71 years old, and I'm hiding behind a dumpster in a dark alley, my shirt torn and my hips screaming in agony. The smell of rotting garbage fills my lungs, but I don't feel it. I am completely numb except for the throbbing pain in my knee where it hit the pavement. I crouch in the darkness, peering around the rusted metal edge, my eyes fixed on the front door of the pub. I am watching my son, Corey. He burst out of the pub seconds after I fell. He wasn't looking for his sick father. He wasn't worried. He was furious. His face was a mask of rage. He scanned the street left and right, his hands clenched into fists. He wasn't looking for an old man who might have fallen. He was looking for an escapee. He was looking for me. Right there, hiding in the filth, I understood. I wasn't a father to be cared for. I was a problem to be managed. An obstacle. He didn't see me. He whipped out his phone. He didn't dial my number. He mashed a name on his screen. He was breathing heavily, pacing in a tight circle on the sidewalk under the flickering neon sign. I was just close enough. The alley acted like a funnel for the sound. I heard his voice, sharp and cold, cutting through the night air. "Brittany," he spat. "He knows." One word. He. Not Dad. Not my father. Not Lewis. He. It was the word you use for an object, a thing, a target. In that single cold syllable, 42 years of fatherhood evaporated. All the baseball games, the college tuition, the nights I stayed up worrying about him, all of it erased. I was just he. I leaned my head back against the brick wall, the rough surface scratching my scalp. Corey kept talking, his voice a low, vicious hiss. I don't know how the idiot bartender. I think he said something. It doesn't matter. The quiet way is blown. "We're moving to Plan B. Execute now." He listened for a second, his whole body vibrating with tension. "No, I can't wait. Just get to the branch. I'm heading to the bank right now. Meet me there. We have to drain it before he tries to lock the account. Go." He snapped his phone shut and sprinted, not walked, sprinted, to his BMW parked down the street. The engine roared to life, tires squealing as he pulled an illegal U-turn and sped away. Adrenaline, cold and pure, flooded my system, washing away the pain in my hip. He was going to the bank. The bank. They were going to drain the account. My money. Althea's money. My life. I scrambled out from behind the dumpster, my leg threatening to buckle. I ignored it. I stumbled out of the alley onto the main street, gasping. A taxi was dropping a couple off at the corner. I didn't wait for it to stop. I ran to it, yanking the back door open before the couple was even fully on the curb. "Hey," the driver yelled, a young guy with an earpiece. I didn't have time to argue. I fumbled for my wallet, pulled out the first bill I could grab, a 50, and threw it over the seat. "See that black BMW that just tore out of here?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Follow it! Follow that car! It's an emergency! Don't lose him! Just drive!" The driver looked at the 50, looked at my wild eyes, my torn shirt. He probably thought I was a crazy old man, or maybe he thought this was some juicy domestic drama. He didn't care. He hit the gas. "You got it, old-timer. Buckle up." The drive was a blur. Corey was fast, reckless, weaving through traffic. But this cab driver was good. He kept a safe distance, tracking him through the downtown Charlotte streets. Corey wasn't going home. He wasn't going to an office. He was heading straight for the main Bank of America corporate center, the massive glass tower that dominated the skyline. He pulled his car into the red zone right in front of the main entrance, leaving it idling. And she was there. Brittany. She was waiting for him on the sidewalk, pacing back and forth, illuminated by the cold blue light of the ATM vestibule. She wasn't wearing her casual, passive-aggressive South Park wife outfit. She was dressed in a sharp, dark pantsuit. She looked like a soldier. Corey jumped out of the car. She ran to him. And right there on the sidewalk, under the unblinking eye of a security camera, she grabbed his face and they kissed. It wasn't a gentle peck. It wasn't the kiss of a daughter-in-law and son. It was a deep, desperate, passionate kiss. A kiss of relief, of panic, of partners, of co-conspirators solidifying their alliance before the final heist. My stomach turned to acid. They broke apart. They didn't linger. Corey adjusted his tie. Brittany smoothed her jacket. They turned perfectly in sync and walked side by side, a power couple on a mission, straight through the glass doors and into the 24-hour banking lobby. "What now, Pops?" the driver asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "Want me to wait?" My throat was too dry to speak. I just nodded. We sat there in the idling cab. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The clock on the dashboard felt like a bomb. They were in there right now at the ATM, or maybe with a teller using that fake, fraudulent piece of paper Mike the bartender had stamped. They were using my stroke, my trembling hand, my unsound mind to steal $1.2 million. 5 minutes. That's all it took. The glass doors slid open again. They walked out. Corey looked relieved. But Brittany was smiling. She was holding a sleek black leather briefcase. A briefcase I recognized. It was the one I had given Corey when he graduated with his MBA. She patted it once, a short, sharp gesture of absolute triumph. She looked at Corey, her eyes shining, and she laughed. A bright, happy, genuine laugh. They had it. They had the money. They had everything. They got back into the BMW. They didn't even look in my direction. They were too busy celebrating. The car pulled away, merging smoothly into traffic, and disappeared. I just sat there in the back of the cab, the smell of cheap air freshener choking me. I was 71 years old. I was 1,000 miles from home. And I had just watched my only son and his wife steal my entire life in under 5 minutes. I'm sitting in the back of a yellow cab parked across the street from a Bank of America, and I just watched my whole life drive away in a black BMW. The cab driver's voice pulled me back. "So, where to now, Pops? You just gonna sit here all night?" I couldn't go back to Corey's house, that beige prison. I couldn't go home to Atlanta. There was no home to go to. I was a refugee. Take me to a hotel," I stammered, my voice sounding thin and old to my own ears. "A cheap one, near the highway. Just get me out of here." The driver nodded, no more questions asked. He pulled away from the curb, leaving the cold glass tower of the bank behind us. I watched it disappear in the side mirror until it was just another light in the city skyline. He dropped me at a place called the Cross Country Inn. It was a 2-story block of concrete with a flickering neon vacancy sign. The air in the room smelled like stale smoke and bleach. I fumbled with the key card, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to open the door. I didn't turn on the lights. I threw the deadbolt, a pathetic little piece of metal, and collapsed onto the stiff polyester bedspread. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. They have it. They have the money. But wait. My mind, sluggish with shock, suddenly snagged on a thought. They went into the bank. They had a briefcase, but maybe they only took some of it. Maybe it was a withdrawal. Maybe the full transfer hadn't gone through yet. Banks have procedures, right? Safeguards, especially for a sum that large. He knows. Execute Plan B. Corey's words. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers feeling like fat, useless sausages. I dropped it twice on the thin carpet before I could dial. I didn't call the Charlotte branch. I called my branch. The small community branch in Atlanta where I'd banked for 30 years, where Mrs. Davis had given Corey his first lollipop. The phone rang. Once. Twice. The automated message started. "Thank you for calling Bank of America." I mashed the 0 button over and over, frantic. "Our office hours are..." "Operator," I yelled at the machine. "Fraud operator." Finally a click. A real person. A calm young woman's voice. "Bank of America, this is Janine speaking." How can I help you? My name is Lewis Hayes. I gasped, the words tumbling out. I need to freeze my account, all of them, right now, immediately. There's been fraud, a fraudulent withdrawal. My son Corey Hayes. Janine's voice remained calm but shifted. Okay, Mr. Hayes, I understand. Let me just pull up your file. Can you verify your mother's maiden name and the last four of your social? I gave them to her. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone to my ear. I was pacing the small dark room. From the window I could see the highway cars streaming past their headlights like indifferent eyes. Okay, Mr. Hayes, I have your accounts here. Her voice was professional level. I see you're checking your money market and the primary savings account. Now you said you want to report a fraudulent... She stopped. The silence on the other end of the line was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was a vacuum. It was a void. Janine, I whispered. Janine, are you there? Her voice when it came back was different. The professional calm was gone. It was replaced by a soft, terrible pity. Oh, Mr. Hayes, she said. Just those 3 words. And I knew. Before she said another word, I knew. Mr. Hayes, I'm looking at the account. You said you wanted to stop a transaction. Yes, I shouted. The transfer, $1.2 million, stop it. Another pause. She was typing. Sir, she said, her voice now incredibly gentle, as if she were talking to a child, or to someone who was, as Corey had claimed, not of sound mind. Sir, I can't stop that transaction. It's already been completed. It was finalized 23 minutes ago. My legs gave out. I didn't sit down. I just collapsed. I slid down the drywall, the rough texture scraping my back until I was sitting on the floor, my knees pulled up to my chest. The cheap motel phone felt slick with sweat in my hand. What? What do you mean? I asked, but I knew what she meant. The transfer was initiated from your Charlotte branch, sir. It was authorized by your legally appointed power of attorney, a Mr. Corey Hayes. It was a wire transfer. $1,200,000. The full balance of your savings. Mr. Hayes, the transfer was to an offshore holding account in the Cayman Islands. She was still talking. Something about international banking laws and irrevocable. Something about how since it was authorized by my legal agent, it wasn't technically fraud. It was just a transfer. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the carpet. I could hear her tiny, tinny voice saying, Mr. Hayes. Sir, Mr. Hayes, are you still there? I didn't answer. I just stared at the wall. It was gone. All of it. 50 years of getting up before dawn. 50 years of sawdust in my lungs and varnish on my hands. 50 years of carefully saving of Althea, meticulously balancing the checkbook of us planning a retirement. A quiet, peaceful retirement where I would finally have time to just be. All of it gone. Stolen in 23 minutes by my own son. And then the memory hit me. It was so sharp, so clear, it felt like my wife was in the room with me. Althea. We were sitting on our porch in Atlanta just after Corey and Brittany's wedding. It was a few years back. The wedding had been extravagant. Far more than we could afford, but Brittany's parents had insisted. Althea was quiet, sipping her sweet tea. She hadn't been quiet all day. What's wrong, Thea? I'd asked, taking her hand. She looked at me, her eyes, those beautiful, wise eyes, full of a sadness I couldn't understand. I don't like her, Lewis, she said, her voice low. What? You don't like Brittany? She's full of life. She's ambitious. She's not ambitious, Althea said, shaking her head. She's hungry, and I don't like the way she looks at you. What are you talking about? I laughed. She's always perfectly polite to me. No, Louis, Althea insisted, turning to face me. She doesn't look at you. She looks past you. She looks at this house. She looks at your workshop. She looks at our savings. She looks at you like you're a checkbook. A checkbook that hasn't been opened yet. I had pulled my hand away. I got angry. That's a terrible thing to say, Althea. That's our son's wife. He loves her. He doesn't love her, Althea whispered, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "He's terrified of her. And he's weak, Lewis. You were always too hard on him, and I was always too soft, and somewhere in the middle we made him weak, and she knows it. She will use that weakness, and she will use your trust, and one day, Lewis, you'll see. She's not just hungry, she's a predator." I had stood up. I told her she was being cruel. I told her she was jealous. I told her to stop, and we never spoke of it again, until now. Now, sitting on the floor of a cheap motel room, broke and alone at 71, her words came back to me. "She's a predator. He's weak. She will use your trust." I doubled over, a sound tearing out of my throat that wasn't a word, wasn't a cry. It was the sound of a man breaking. I had failed her. I had failed to protect what we built. I had been so blind, so stupidly, arrogantly blind. My wife had seen the snake in our garden from the very beginning. And I had invited it in for dinner. I had given it the keys to our house. I had just given it all away. And I am a fool. I sat on that motel floor for, I don't know how long, an hour, maybe two. The world outside the dirty window went from dark to a sick gray dawn. I just sat there, hollowed out. My son, my own son. My first thought, the one that screamed in my head, was, call the police, report the theft. But then the shame hit me. A wave of it so cold and heavy it stole my breath. What would I say? My son, the big shot fund manager, just stole my life savings. What would that do? It would be in the papers. It would be the end of everything. And worse, what was my proof? Lewis Hayes, had just spent an hour on the phone with my bank. And what did they tell me? They told me the transaction was legal. They told me my legally appointed agent had authorized it. As far as the bank was concerned, as far as the law was concerned, Corey hadn't stolen a dime. I had given it to him. Mike the bartender, he knew. But it would be his word against a pile of notarized documents. Documents he stamped. He'd be implicated. And that fake doctor's note. It was all planned. They had planned for this. They had insulated themselves. If I called the police now, they would look at me. A confused, frantic 71-year-old man babbling in a cheap motel room, his shirt torn, claiming his successful son robbed him. Corey's words echoed in my head. No longer of sound mind. They would think I was senile. They would think I was the one who was lying. They had already built the narrative. I would be the crazy old father, consumed by dementia, making up stories about his loving, concerned son. I felt a despair so profound I thought it would just stop my heart. I was trapped. He had outmaneuvered me at every turn. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had stolen my credibility. He had stolen my voice. I was alone. I had no one. Althea was gone. My friends back in Atlanta. What could they do? And then, like a small, clear bell ringing through the fog, a name. Tasha. My niece. My sister's girl. Tasha was not like the rest of us. She was sharp. Where I was built of wood and trust, Tasha was built of steel and contracts. She was a financial lawyer, a shark. She worked for a high-powered firm in Washington, D.C., the kind of place that sued governments for fun. She was the last person I had spoken to at Althea's funeral. She had held my hand, her grip firm, her eyes clear and dry. "He's a fool, Uncle Louis," she had whispered, nodding toward Corey, who was making a show of grieving for his mother. "And she is a viper. Be careful." At the time, I'd been offended. Now, her words were a lifeline. My hands were shaking again, but this time with purpose. I found her number in my contacts. I stared at the name for a full minute. Calling her meant admitting it. Admitting Althea was right. Admitting I had been a fool. Admitting I had lost everything. I pressed the call button. She picked up on the second ring, her voice wide awake, crisp. It was 6 a.m. "Uncle Louis," she said. There was no sleep in her voice. Just surprise. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" And for the second time that night, I broke. The dam of my pride, my shock, my rage. It just crumbled. "No, Tasha," I whispered, and my voice cracked a pathetic old man's sound. "No, baby. Nothing's okay. It's all gone." "What's gone, Uncle?" she asked. Her voice was calm, not alarmed. It was the voice of a doctor asking, "Where does it hurt?" I told her. I told her everything. Every single humiliating detail. I told her about the flight, the fake smiles, the cold, empty house, the celebration, the awful loud pub. I told her about Corey's nervous energy, him disappearing for that work call. I told her about Mike, the bartender, the notary, the words that changed my life. Stroke, trembling hand, no longer of sound mind. I told her about climbing out that filthy bathroom window, my knees screaming. I told her about hiding behind the dumpster. I told her about Corey's phone call, the word he used. He knows, execute plan B. I told her about the cab ride, the Bank of America tower, the kiss, that kiss on the sidewalk. I told her about the briefcase and Brittany's triumphant, happy laugh as they drove away with my life. I told her about the motel room, the call to the bank, the wire transfer, the Cayman Islands. It's all gone, Tasha. I finished, the tears finally coming hot and silent. He took it all, $1.2 million, and the bank said it was legal. The bank said I gave it to him. They think I'm crazy, Tasha. He won. There was silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't the shocked, pitiful silence of the bank teller. It was a different kind of silence. It was cold. It was focused. It was the silence of a predator hearing its prey. When Tasha finally spoke, her voice had no sympathy in it. It was ice. He didn't win, she said. He just signed his own death warrant. What do I do? I whispered. You are going to do exactly what I say, she commanded. First, you're going to text me the address of that motel, right now. Second, you are going to lock that door, put a chair under the knob, and you are not going to open it for anyone but me. Third, and this is the most important, you will not call Corey. You will not answer his calls. You will not reply to his texts. He is going to be frantic trying to find his confused old father. You are from this moment on a ghost. Do you understand me, Uncle Lewis? Yes, I said. I'm on the first flight out of Dulles. It leaves at 8:05. I'll be in Charlotte by 9:30. Don't move. She was about to hang up, but I had to say it. Tasha, baby, I'm sorry. Your mother, Althea, they both tried to tell me. Stop. She cut me off, but not unkindly. This isn't your fault. This is theirs. You're a good man, Uncle Lewis. You're a trusting man. They use that against you. She paused, and I heard her keyboard clicking in the background. She was already working. When my mom got sick, she said, her voice a little softer, and I was about to drop out of law school, you drove to D.C. You sat me down, you wrote a check for my tuition, and you said, a mind like yours doesn't get to quit. You remember that? I remember, I whispered. I told you I'd owe you one, she said. Her voice was hard again. Well, this is the one. They picked a fight with the wrong old man, Uncle Lewis, and they definitely picked a fight with the wrong lawyer. I'll see you in 3 hours. Sit tight, and don't you dare think they've won. The line went dead. I sat there, the phone in my lap. The sun was streaming through the cheap curtains. The despair was still there, but it wasn't alone anymore. Underneath it, something new was growing. Something cold and sharp. It was hope. I spent the night in a chair I wedged under the door handle of a cheap motel room. I did not sleep. I watched the shadows move across the wall as the sun came up. I was a ghost in my own life. At 9:34 a.m., exactly when she said she would be here, there was a knock. It wasn't a frantic, worried knock. It was a sharp, precise, impatient knock. Uncle Lewis, it's Tasha. Open the door. I pulled the chair away. My body ached. I opened the door and she was there, Tasha, my niece. She wasn't dressed like the high-powered D.C. lawyer she was. She was wearing running shoes, black leggings, and a gray t-shirt. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked like she was here to run a marathon, not solve a multi-million-dollar fraud case. She stepped past me into the room. Her eyes took in everything in one quick, dismissive glance. The filthy carpet, the unmade bed I had collapsed on, my torn shirt which I was still wearing, my face. She didn't hug me. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" She just dropped her backpack on the room's only desk. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No." "Did you call him? Did you answer any of his calls?" "No. I turned the phone off." "Good." She unzipped her backpack and pulled out a laptop and a legal pad. "He'll be desperate by now. He's lost control of his confused old father. He'll be making mistakes. Let him." She looked at me, and for the first time her eyes softened just a fraction. Go wash your face, Uncle Louis. Get a bottle of water from the machine. We have work to do. What work, Tasha? The money is gone. It's in the Cayman Islands. Money can be found, she said, cutting me off. But the trail gets cold fast. We're going to see the bartender. We're going to see your friend Mike the notary. 20 minutes later, we were standing outside the pub. It was closed. The windows were dark. The neon beer signs were off. It looked as dead as I felt. He's not here, Tasha. It's not open. He's here, she said. A bar that closes at 2 a.m. needs to be cleaned by 10. She didn't knock. She just pounded onto the glass door with the flat of her hand. Mike, open up. We need to talk to you. We waited. Nothing. Then a shadow moved in the darkness. Mike appeared from the back. He was holding a mop. He was wearing a grease-stained t-shirt. He saw me standing there next to Tasha, and his face went white. He looked sick. He walked to the door but didn't unlock it. He spoke through the glass. We're not open. I can't talk. I've got work to do. You've got 5 seconds to open this door, Mike, Tasha said. Her voice was perfectly calm, perfectly level. It was terrifying. Or my next stop is the district attorney's office. Mike flinched like she'd slapped him. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking, and unlocked the door. He opened it just a crack. Look, man, he whispered, looking at me. I'm sorry. I really am. I told you what I knew. I can't get involved. Your son, he's a powerful guy. Tasha didn't wait for an invitation. She just pushed the door open, forcing him to stumble back. She walked right past him and sat down at one of the bar stools. I followed her, feeling like a shadow. The bar smelled like stale beer and bleach. You're worried about Corey? Tasha asked, her voice echoing in the empty room. She pulled her laptop from its case and set it on the bar. You think he's your problem right now? Mike was wringing his hands. I could lose my job. I could lose my notary license. Tasha looked up from her screen. She finally looked at him. You're worried about your license, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. Let's talk about you losing your liberty. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her wallet. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She flipped it open, showing him her credentials. Tasha Williams, attorney at law. I am a member of the D.C. Bar and the North Carolina Bar Association, and as of this morning, I am the legal counsel for Mr. Louis Hayes. Mike swallowed hard. He looked like he was going to be sick. Here's what you did, Mike, Tasha said, counting on her fingers. You failed to perform due diligence. You notarized a fraudulent document based on hearsay. You did not properly identify or interview the signatory, my client. You actively participated in a conspiracy to commit fraud against an elder. She leaned forward. That's not just losing your license, Mike. That's a felony. That's 5 to 10 years in a state prison. You will lose this bar. You will lose your house. You will lose everything. Mike started to stammer. He tricked me. Or, Tasha continued as if he hadn't spoken, you can cooperate right now, completely. You can give me a sworn affidavit detailing everything that happened, and in return, I might consider listing you as a cooperating witness instead of a co-conspirator. I want to know exactly what my cousin Corey Hayes said to you, every single word. Mike just crumpled. All the fight went out of him. He grabbed a rag and started wiping the clean bar, his hands shaking violently. He came in yesterday, Mike whispered. Just after the lunch rush. Like I told you, Mr. Hayes. He was frantic. He said you were at Charlotte Memorial. He said you'd had a stroke. He said you were confused. And you just believed him. I finally said, my voice hoarse. You saw me last night. You knew I was fine. But you believed him. No, Mike said, slamming the rag down. He looked desperate. That's the thing. He didn't just say it. He had proof. He had papers. Tasha stopped typing. She looked up. What papers? He had a letter, Mike said, his voice dropping. A doctor's note. It looked real. It was on that fancy thick paper. It was on official letterhead from some neurologist. It said you, Mr. Hayes, were diagnosed with rapid onset dementia. It said you were no longer of sound mind and a danger to your own financial well-being. My blood ran cold. Dementia. He had put it in writing. Tasha was perfectly still. Her eyes narrowed. She had found the next thread. A doctor's note. she repeated. What was the doctor's name? Mike squeezed his eyes shut, thinking. Miller. Yeah, that was it. Dr. James Miller, a neurologist. The letterhead. It said his office was over on, McDowell Street. Tasha pulled out a small notepad and a pen. She wrote it down. Dr. James Miller. She said, her voice almost a whisper. She looked at me, and I saw that cold, sharp focus again. The shark had a scent. A fake stroke, Saha mused. A fake doctor. A fake diagnosis. She snapped her laptop shut and stood up. Okay, we're done here, Mike. Expect a call from my paralegal. You'll sign that affidavit today, or I'll have you arrested by dinner. Your choice. We walked out of the bar back into the bright morning sun. Tasha, what now? I asked, shielding my eyes. Now, she said, already pulling out her phone, we go find out if Dr. Miller actually exists, and if he doesn't, we find out who pretended to be him. And according to a forged letter from a fake doctor, I have dementia. I stumbled out of the dark pub, my feet unsteady on the pavement. I had to lean against the brick wall of the alley. The bright morning sun felt like an attack. It felt too real, too harsh. The words just echoed in my head, a sickening loop. Dementia. Rapid onset dementia. A danger to his financial well-being. It was so clinical, so cold, so final. Tasha didn't say a word. She just put a firm hand on my elbow and guided me to her rental car, a generic white Nissan, parked down the street. I collapsed into the passenger seat. I felt frail. I felt confused. I felt for a horrible second, just like the old man they had described in that letter. I felt contaminated by their lie. Tasha got in the driver's seat. She didn't start the car. She didn't offer me a single comforting word. She didn't say, "That's awful, Uncle Lewis, how could they?" She just flipped open her laptop, the one she'd had on the bar, and balanced it on her steering wheel. Her face was granite. Okay, she said, her voice like ice. Dr. James Miller, neurologist, McDowell Street. Her fingers didn't just type, they flew. A rapid clack, 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 clack was the only sound in the car. It was the sound of a predator picking up the scent. Tasha, what if he is real? I whispered. The thought suddenly terrified me. What if what if he paid a real doctor, bribed him to... One step at a time, Uncle Lewis, she said, her eyes locked on the screen. We check the state medical board first, always. Then we check professional listings. Then we check the address. I just watched her holding my breath. I watched her click, scroll, click again. Her brow furrowed not in confusion, but in concentration. No, she said after a long minute. No. What? My voice was barely a whisper. No Dr. James Miller licensed with the North Carolina Medical Board. No neurologist by that name with a practice in Charlotte, or Raleigh, or anywhere in the state. He's a ghost. Maybe he's new, I offered, grasping at straws. Maybe he just moved here. Maybe, she said, her voice flat, unconvinced. She typed again, her fingers a blur. Let's look at the address. Mike said McDowell Street. She typed the address Mike had given her into a different search. Google Maps. The screen filled with an image. A satellite photo. A tired, faded L-shaped strip mall. A dry cleaner on one end. A nail salon. A check cashing place. And in the middle... Tasha didn't say anything. She just tapped her finger on the screen. I leaned in, my old eyes struggling to focus. The sign on the building was bright blue and gold. It's a UPS store, I said, my voice hollow. It's a UPS store, Tasha confirmed. Tasha. She closed the laptop with a quiet final snap. A mailbox. A place where you can rent a private box for $50 a month to make it look like you have a real office suite. A place to have mail sent. She turned to me. He's not real, Uncle Lewis. The doctor is fake. The letterhead was printed at a copy shop. The diagnosis is fake. It was all a cheap, disgusting performance to trick a small-time notary. A wave of relief so powerful it made me dizzy washed over me. I laughed, a dry, choked sound. So that's it, right? I said, my voice rising with desperate hope. We've got them. We've got the proof. We go to the police right now. We tell them the doctor is fake. They arrest Corey. They arrest Brittany. They get the money back. I was desperate for this nightmare to be over. Tasha just looked at me. Her expression was not one of victory. It was grim. It was the face of a lawyer about to deliver bad news. "No, Uncle Lewis," she said softly, and my heart, which had just soared, plummeted right back into my shoes. That's not how this works." "What do you mean?" I demanded, the anger returning. "It's fraud. We just proved it. It's an open and shut case." "We proved the pretense was fraud," she explained, her voice sharp again, the lawyer back in charge. "But that's not the real problem. The real problem isn't the fake letter, Uncle Lewis. The real problem is the notarized stamp. The real problem is the power of attorney. The real problem is the bank." She took a deep breath, and I could tell she was forcing herself to be patient. "Listen to me very carefully. As far as Bank of America is concerned, they received a legally binding document properly notarized authorizing Corey Hayes to act as your agent. They followed the law. When they wired that $1.2 million to the Cayman Islands, they weren't committing fraud. They were fulfilling a legal instruction." But Mike will testify," I protested. "Mike will testify that he was tricked." Tasha cut in, her voice like steel. "Corey will hire a $5,000 an hour lawyer who will say Mike is lying to save his own skin. It becomes a he said mess. We'd have to sue them. It would take years, Uncle Lewis. Years of depositions, motions, court battles, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that we don't have. And all that time, your money, your $1.2 million, stays in an untouchable, untraceable offshore account. By the time we win, if we win, Corey and Brittany will have spent every last dime." I just stared at her. The hope that had bloomed in my chest just moments ago wilted and died. She was right. He had built the perfect trap. He knew the system. He knew the law. He had used a fraudulent document to create a legal transaction. He had won. I slumped back in my seat, the fight completely gone out of me. I felt every one of my 71 years. So what do we do?" I whispered. "There's nothing we can do." I watched Tasha. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring out the windshield, her eyes unfocused, her brow furrowed. I could practically see the gears turning, clicking, rearranging in her brilliant mind. "They made a mistake," she whispered almost to herself. "What?" I said, my voice dull. "What mistake? It sounds like they did everything right." "No," she said, and she turned to me. Her eyes were suddenly electric, alive. "They did everything too fast." She leaned forward, her voice dropping, filled with a new, dangerous energy. "Think about it, Uncle Lewis. This was a good plan. A fake doctor, a notarized POA. This is the kind of plan you sit on. You let it age. You build the narrative. You spend 6 months telling friends and family that Dad is getting so confused. You have him accidentally miss a bill payment. You have your fake doctor see him. You create a paper trail. You make the lie real before you ever act." "But they didn't do that," I said, my mind slowly catching up to hers. "No," she said, and the smallest, coldest smile I had ever seen just barely touched her lips. "They didn't. They flew you into town. And less than 24 hours later, they're faking documents, lying to notaries, and wiring your entire life savings to an offshore account. That isn't strategy, Uncle Lewis. That's panic." She started the car. The engine rumbled to life, and I felt the vibration in my chest. "They didn't just want your money," she said, her voice hardening. "They needed it. They needed $1.2 million, and they needed it today." She put the car in gear. "Corey is greedy. I've always known that. But this isn't just greed. This smells like Brittany. This is the desperation of a gambler who's about to have her legs broken. They didn't just steal your retirement, Uncle. They used it to pay a debt. A very, very big debt." She pulled out of the parking spot, her movement sharp and decisive. "They're not the hunters anymore, Uncle Lewis," she said, her dark eyes finding mine. "They're the prey, and we just need to find out who's hunting them." And I am sitting in the passenger seat of a white Nissan sedan parked under a large oak tree watching my son's house. Tasha had put the car in drive, her eyes filled with that dangerous electric energy. She had a theory. She had a target. "Corey's greedy, Uncle Lewis," she said, her voice low and confident as she pulled away from the UPS store. "I've always known that. He's weak and he's entitled. He's the kind of man who thinks the world owes him a living because he's smart. That's why he was the perfect target for someone like her." "Brittany," I said. The name felt like ash in my mouth. Brittany. Tasha confirmed, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. This whole plan, the speed of it, the desperation. This isn't Corey. Corey would have taken years to build this fraud to make it perfect. This is sloppy. It's fast. It's panicked. She took a sharp right turn, heading toward the South Park neighborhood. This is the move of a gambler, Uncle Lewis, she said, her eyes scanning every car, every street. It's the move of someone who is so deep in a hole they can't see daylight. It's a last-ditch all-or-nothing bet to save her own skin. Corey is just the terrified, lovesick fool she convinced to help her pull the trigger. He's a pawn. She is the one we need to follow. She is the one who will lead us to the money. And that's what we were doing. We were hunting. We drove to a public park about 3 blocks from Corey and Brittany's beige mansion. Tasha parked the Nissan in a spot with a clear view of the street that led out of their gated community. Now what? I asked. I felt useless. I was a man of action, a man who built things with his hands. This sitting, this waiting, it was eating me alive. Now, she said, we wait. She pulled a pair of small, high-powered binoculars from her backpack. She just got her hands on $1.2 million. She has a massive urgent debt to pay. She is not going to be sitting at home celebrating with champagne. She is going to be moving that money. She's going to be paying off her monster. So we waited. We sat in that car as the late morning sun climbed high, heating the interior until it felt like an oven. I felt the sweat trickling down my back under the torn shirt I still wore from the night before. I watched a woman push a stroller past. I watched a man walk his dog. It was all so normal. A normal Tuesday. And here I was, a 71-year-old ghost on a stakeout, watching my son's house, waiting for my predator of a daughter-in-law to show herself. We sat for 2 hours. My bad knee began to throb, a dull pounding ache. My stomach rumbled. I hadn't eaten since that bitter beer at the pub. Maybe you're wrong, Tasha, I finally whispered, my voice hoarse. Maybe they're just gone. Maybe they're on a plane to the Cayman Islands right now. No, she said, her voice firm, her eyes never leaving the binoculars. They can't. The money, it's just a number in a computer. The people she owes, they don't want a wire transfer. They don't want a digital trail. People like that, they want cash. She's got to find a way to make that digital money physical. And she has to do it fast. She's trapped here until she can deliver. Just as the words left her mouth, a car pulled out of the gated community's entrance. That's her, Tasha said, her voice suddenly sharp. But it wasn't the black BMW X5 they'd picked me up in. It wasn't the sleek silver Lexus I knew Brittany drove. It was an old car, a beat-up late 90s Honda Accord. The paint was peeling on the roof and one of the hubcaps was missing. It was a ghost car, a burner. Where did she get that? I asked, sitting up straight, my pain forgotten. Smart, Tasha muttered, her eyes tracking the car. She's trying not to be followed. She knew we, or someone, might be watching her luxury cars. She started the Nissan's engine. She's smart, but not smart enough. Tasha let the Honda get a full block ahead, then she pulled out, keeping a city bus and a large delivery truck between us. She drove like a professional, calm, relaxed, her movements fluid. She never got too close. She never fell too far behind. I just stared at the back of that rattling blue car. That was my daughter-in-law. The woman who wore $500 shoes. The woman who complained that my son's bonus wasn't big enough, driving a car that looked like it belonged in a junkyard. Althea's voice echoed in my head. She's a predator. My wife had been so right. Where is she going? I asked, my heart beginning to pound. She's not heading toward the bank. No? Tasha said, her eyes narrowed in concentration. And she's not heading toward that art gallery she supposedly manages. Brittany was driving away from the polished, wealthy enclave of South Park. She was heading east, crossing the highway, driving into a part of Charlotte I had never seen. The shiny glass towers and manicured lawns gave way to check-cashing stores, pawn shops, and boarded-up buildings. The streets were cracked, the sidewalks littered with trash. This was a place of desperation. My hands were balled into fists on my knees. I could feel my fingernails digging into my palms. The Honda slowed. It turned down a narrow side street, a dead-end road lined with warehouses whose windows were broken out. It pulled to a stop in front of a squat single-story brick building. There was no sign on the door, just a faded number 14 painted on the brick. The windows were covered from the inside with what looked like aluminum foil. A single bare bulb burned over the steel door. Brittany got out of the car. She wasn't carrying the leather briefcase. She was carrying a large, expensive-looking designer handbag. She looked around, her movements quick, bird-like, paranoid. Then she hurried to the door, knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. A slot in the door slid open. A moment later, a heavy buzz sounded, and she pushed the door open and disappeared inside. Tasha didn't drive down the street. She parked at the corner, partially hidden by a rusting, abandoned dump truck. "We wait," she said. "What is this place?" I whispered. It felt like a scene from a movie, not my life. "This," Tasha said, "is where the real banks are." She pulled out her phone, not her personal one, but a different one, a burner phone from her backpack. She aimed it at the building. "Look," she said, nodding toward the front of the building. 2 men had come out of a side door. They were big, not just tall, but wide. They were wearing tracksuits despite the heat. They both had thick gold chains. They looked dangerous. They stood on the corner just watching, like guards. They were watching the street. They were watching us. "Don't look at them," Tasha ordered, her voice low. She pretended to be checking her phone, but I could see her thumb angled up, clicking the side button, taking pictures. She captured the men. She captured the peeling license plate on a black Cadillac Escalade parked in front of the building. A car with tinted windows so dark they looked like black holes. "Tasha, what kind of place is this?" She put the phone down, her face grim. "This Uncle Lewis is a loan shark's office, a high-end one. The kind of place you go to when you owe a bookie $500,000 from a bad bet. The kind of place you go when you're so desperate you'll borrow money at 200% interest." She looked at me, her eyes full of a cold, hard understanding. "This is where she's been bleeding money, and today is the day she's come to pay them back, with your $1.2 million. And I am parked on a dead-end street in a part of Charlotte I never knew existed, watching a steel door. Behind that door, my daughter-in-law Brittany is negotiating with gangsters. My heart was a cold, hard stone in my chest. Every minute that ticked by felt like an hour. I kept imagining a muffled sound, a scream, a gunshot. "Tasha, how long has she been in there?" I whispered. The windows were up, the car was off. The heat was stifling. It's been 20 minutes. What is she doing? Is she paying them? Is she handing over my money in that purse?" Tasha didn't answer me. She wasn't watching the door. Her eyes were down and she was back on her laptop, the one she had balanced on the steering wheel. She had her burner phone, the one she'd used to take the photos, resting on the dashboard, and she was cross-referencing the license plate of the black Escalade with something. I didn't ask what she was doing. I didn't ask what databases she was accessing. When I was a young man, my father taught me that when a master carpenter measures a piece of wood, you don't talk, you just watch. Watching Tasha work was like that. It was quiet, it was precise, and it was absolute. You just stayed out of the way and trusted the process. Her fingers were a blur, that same sharp, quiet clack, clack, clack. It was the only sound in the car besides my own ragged breathing. She was running the plate. She was running the address of the building. She was running, I realized, the name Brittany Hayes. She was digging. "Ha!" She let out a single sharp laugh. It wasn't a sound of humor. It was a cold, hard sound of confirmation, like a hammer hitting a nail. "What?" I said, my voice cracking. "What is it? Did you find something?" She didn't look up from the screen. "The art gallery," she said, her voice flat. "The one in South Park. The one she manages. The one she's always bragging about, flying to Art Basel in Miami, going to New York to meet clients." "Yes," I said, my heart pounding. "What about it?" "She was fired," Tasha said. She scrolled. "She was fired 6 months ago." "What?" I said, leaning over. "No, that can't be right. Corey told me she just got a promotion. They threw a party for it. We sent them money, $5,000, for a celebration." Tasha's face was grim. "Then you paid for a party of lies. She was terminated on April 17th. The reason listed is..." Financial irregularities. Financial irregularities. It's corporate code, Uncle Lewis. Tasha said, her voice laced with contempt. It means she was caught with her hand in the till. Embezzlement. Stealing from the company. I just stared at the windshield. But why wouldn't they press charges? Why wouldn't it be in the news? Because, Tasha said, clicking on another link, the gallery's primary owner also has a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio managed by, guess who, Corey Hayes. The sickness rose in my throat. Oh, God. They buried it, Tasha said. Corey must have begged his boss. They buried it to avoid a public scandal that would have implicated them both. But she was out, unemployed, for 6 straight months. She hasn't had a paycheck since April. I sank back into my seat. It was like the floor had just dropped out from under me. All this time, all the stories about client dinners and business lunches. It was all a lie, I whispered. It was all a cover story, Tasha said, her voice hardening. She's been living a complete, total, desperate lie. I thought back, 6 months ago, April. That was right around the time Corey had started asking for small loans. Just temporary cash flow problems. Just to cover a gap before my bonus dad, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. I thought he was making bad investments. I thought he was just bad with money. He wasn't. He was funding her. He was pouring money into the black hole of her lie, trying to keep up the appearance of their perfect, wealthy life. But that's not the interesting part, Tasha said, her voice dropping. She had clicked on something else. The screen changed. It went from a public records search to something darker, a site with a black background with links I didn't recognize. Tasha, what is that? It's a resource, she said vaguely, for finding things people don't want found. Getting fired for stealing is one thing, Uncle Lewis. That's just common white-collar crime. This is the whole story. She continued. When you get fired for financial irregularities, you leave a digital trail. It puts you on certain lists, especially if you're a high net worth individual. And when you combine that, she typed in a password with other activities. She turned the laptop screen toward me. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. It looked like a ledger, a long scrolling list of names I didn't recognize. Golden Palace, Eurobet, Atlantic Online, Caspian Holdings. Beside the names were numbers, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and beside the numbers, the word loss. Over and over. Loss. 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 She wasn't just stealing from the gallery, Uncle Lewis, Tasha said, her voice now dangerously quiet. She was funding a habit, a very, very expensive habit. What is this? I whispered, though I already knew. It's her online gambling record, Tasha said. It's catastrophic. This isn't a few bad bets on a football game. This is an addiction, a severe pathological one. She's been chasing her losses for, it looks like, years. She pointed to the bottom of the screen. The numbers weren't losses anymore. They were debts, digital IOUs, private markers. She owes, my God. Tasha whispered, her own professional calm finally breaking. She was doing the math in her head. She has markers, debts, from 6 offshore books, and they've all been, oh no, they've all been consolidated, bought up by one entity, the entity that owns that building. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands were cold. How much? I asked, my voice a dry rasp. Tasha, how much does she owe? Tasha's eyes met mine. The pity was back. It was the same look the bank teller had given me. 1.5, she said. 1.5 thousand, I asked, praying. 1.5 million, Uncle Lewis. The number just hung in the air. $1.5 million. But I stammered, my mind racing, unable to comprehend. I only had 1.2. My house, the shop, it was 1.2. How? She was desperate, Tasha said. She was probably hoping your 1.2 would be enough to buy her more time. Enough to show good faith while she and Corey figured out how to steal the rest. The air left my lungs. My mind flashed back again, a sharp, painful jolt. Althea, always Althea, standing in our kitchen in Atlanta, shaking her head. It was after one of Brittany's many business trips to Las Vegas. "Who goes on so many business trips to casinos, Louis?" Althea had asked, her hands covered in flour. "That's not art, that's vice. I don't like it." And I had defended her. I had laughed. "It's how business is done now, Thea," I'd said dismissively. "They entertain clients. You're being old-fashioned." "I'm not old-fashioned," she'd said, her eyes sad. "I'm just paying attention." I had defended the very addiction that was now devouring my family. I had paid for her parties. I had given my son money to cover her lies. Just as that sickening realization settled in my stomach, the steel door of the loan shark's office buzzed. It swung open. Brittany stumbled out. She didn't look triumphant. She didn't look relieved. She looked wrecked. Her perfect blonde hair was a mess. Her face was pale, streaked with black mascara. She was clutching her designer handbag to her chest like a life preserver. She ran half-tripping in her high heels to the beat-up Honda. She fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them on the pavement. She looked back over her shoulder at the open door, her eyes wide with a kind of primal terror I had never seen on any human face. The two beefy guards in tracksuits stepped out onto the sidewalk. They lit cigarettes. They didn't even look at her. They looked right at us. One of them, the one with the gold teeth, smiled. A cold, dead smile. And he waved, just a little wiggle of his fingers. They knew we were here. They had known the entire time. They had let us sit here. They wanted us to see. "Tasha," I whispered. Tasha didn't flinch. She just stared back at them. She started the car's engine. "Get down," she said, her voice a low command. "What? Why?" "Get your head down now." I ducked, my heart hammering. Brittany finally got her door open, threw herself inside, and tore down the street tires, squealing as she sped past us. The second she was gone, Tasha spun the Nissan around in a screaming, smoking U-turn, heading the opposite direction. They waved at us," I said, my head still low. "They weren't waving at us, Uncle Louis." Tasha said, her voice grim, her eyes locked on the rearview mirror. We were flying down the street, away from the warehouse, away from the guards. That wasn't the look of someone who just cleared her debt," Tasha said, her knuckles white on the wheel. "That was the look of someone who just showed up to $1 million deal, empty-handed." My head snapped up. "What? But my money?" "She didn't pay them," Tasha said, hitting the main road. "She couldn't. The wire transfer. It takes time to settle. To move it from the Caymans back to the U.S., to get it into cash. That takes days. And those men, they weren't prepared to wait." Tasha looked at me, her face pale, her eyes filled with a new, dawning horror. "The deadline was today, Uncle. She missed it. Corey didn't just know about this. He wasn't just a lovesick fool. He was a willing accomplice in a plan that just failed catastrophically." She pulled over to the curb 2 blocks away, her hands shaking. "They didn't just steal your money to pay a debt, Uncle Louis," she whispered. "They stole your money. And it wasn't enough. And now the real monsters are awake, and they know who she is, and they know who we are. And I have just learned that my son and daughter-in-law are not just thieves. They are terrified prey caught in a trap set by gangsters." We were parked 2 blocks away from that horrible warehouse, the engine idling. Tasha's face was pale, her hands shaking, but her eyes were like burning coals. She was right. The deadline was today. Brittany had missed it. The loan sharks had waved at us. They knew. And now Corey and Brittany were trapped. They had my $1.2 million locked in an offshore account, but they couldn't access it fast enough. They had stolen my life, and it wasn't enough to save theirs. "Tasha," I whispered, my throat dry. They're in danger. Real danger. Those men, they'll kill them, won't they?" Tasha took a deep, shuddering breath. She put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, driving slowly, normally. "Yes," she said, her voice flat. "They will. We have to call the police," I said, my voice rising in panic. "We have to tell them Corey. He's my son, Tasha. He's my son. I don't care about the money. We have to save him. Tasha shot me a look so sharp, so cold, it stopped my heart. Save him, Uncle Lewis. He did this. He tried to destroy you. He tried to steal your life and brand you as a senile old fool. He is not a victim. He is an accomplice. But he's in over his head. He's scared. Good, Tasha said, her voice like flint. Let him be scared. We need him scared. Scared people make mistakes. She pulled the car into the parking lot of a small, quiet park. She turned to me. Before we do anything, before we call the police, before we call the FBI, you need to do one last thing. You need to be sure. I need you to be sure. Sure of what? That he's truly gone, she said, her voice softening just a little. That the man you raised is no longer in there. You need to hear it from his own mouth, because once we make the next call, Uncle Lewis, there is no going back, for any of us. I understood. I had to know. I had to hear the lie or the truth from him. I nodded, my whole body feeling heavy like it was filled with wet cement. Tasha handed me her burner phone, the one that couldn't be traced. I'm putting my phone right here, she said, placing her personal iPhone on the dashboard, its screen facing us. She tapped an app. A red light glowed. This is recording, audio and video, for your protection. Call him. Let's see what the loving son has to say. My fingers felt like lead as I dialed Corey's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was about to call my son and betray him. No, he had betrayed me. I was just pulling back the curtain. I pressed the button. It rang once, twice. My heart pounded with each ring. I almost hung up. Then he answered. Dad, his voice. It wasn't the cold, angry hiss I'd heard in the alley. It was frantic. It was filled with a desperate, breathless, manufactured panic. Dad. Oh my God. Dad, where are you? I was so stunned by the performance I couldn't speak. Dad, are you there? I've been going crazy. I've been calling you all night. I called the police. I called the hospitals. We thought something terrible happened to you. We thought you'd fallen or you'd gotten confused and wandered off. I've been scared to death. Brittany is here. She's hysterical. I could hear Brittany in the background. She was sobbing, loudly, not the terrified, wrecked sobs of the woman who had just fled a loan shark's office. These were theatrical. They were the loud, gasping sobs of a bad actress. It was all a performance, a sick, twisted performance. They didn't know we knew. They thought I was the one who was lost and confused. Their original plan was still in motion. Tasha just watched me, her expression unreadable. She motioned for me to speak. I closed my eyes. I took a breath. I let all the pain, all the betrayal turn to ice. When I spoke, my voice was not the voice of a confused old man. It was the voice of Lewis Hayes. The man who built a business from nothing, the man who buried his wife, the voice of a father who was done. I'm at a hotel, Corey, I said. My voice was low, and it didn't tremble. The sobbing in the background stopped. Instantly. There was a dead, heavy silence on the line. The panic in Corey's voice vanished, replaced by a cold, wary caution. A hotel, he said, his voice flat. Why didn't you call me? We were worried sick. I needed to think, I said. I needed to think about my visit to the pub. Silence again, longer this time. What about the pub? He asked. He was fishing, trying to find out what I knew. I spoke to the bartender, Corey, I said. Mike, the notary. I heard him suck in a breath. He told me about the papers you made him sign. I continued, my voice cold as stone. He told me about the power of attorney. He said you told him I'd had a stroke. He said you told him I was senile, that I wasn't of sound mind. For a full 10 seconds there was nothing, not a sound. I could hear the faint static on the line. I heard a car horn in the distance outside Tasha's car, and then I heard him laugh. It wasn't a real laugh. It was a huff, a short, sharp, bitter sound of pure, unadulterated contempt. The performance was over. The mask was off. That stupid fat, he hissed. I knew he'd be a problem. I knew I should have handled it differently. My heart, which I thought was already broken, just shattered. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't apologizing. He was angry. Angry that his plan had a flaw. So, he said, and his voice was completely different. It was the voice I'd heard in the alley. Cold, arrogant, dismissive. "So the old man's not as confused as I thought. What you gonna call the cops, Dad? What are you gonna tell them that your son is managing your money, that he's protecting your assets?" "It's a little late for that. The bank already agrees with me." "Why Corey?" I whispered, and the ice in my voice finally cracked. The pain was too much. "Why, after everything, after Althea, why would you do this? Why?" He practically yelled. "You want to know why? Because I deserve it. Because I'm tired of you, tired of this life. Because you had your whole life. You had your workshop. You had your perfect marriage. You had everything. And what did I get? I got a father who thought I was weak. A father who was always disappointed. I was never—" "Yes, you were," he screamed. "You were always disappointed. I wasn't tough enough. I didn't want to get sawdust under my fingernails. I wanted more. Well, now I have more. And Brittany needs it. We need it. You're 71 years old, Dad. You're at the end of your life. What the hell do you need $1.2 million for? You're just sitting on it, waiting to die. Well, we need it. We need it now. You don't get to ruin this for us. You owe us. You owe us for all the years you made me feel small." I couldn't breathe. The words, they weren't just angry. They were filled with a lifetime of resentment. A resentment I had never known, never even suspected was festering inside him. "Corey," I tried. "No, you don't get to talk. You had your turn. It's my turn now. The money is gone. You're not getting it back. So you can go back to your cheap motel. You can do whatever you want. But you're going to stay out of my way. Do you understand me? You are done." The line went dead. He had hung up on me. I sat there staring at the blank screen of the burner phone. My hand was still holding it to my ear. Tasha, her face pale, slowly reached out and tapped her own phone, stopping the recording. The little red light went out. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't say anything. She just watched me as the last final piece of my heart, the piece that still held out hope for my son, turned to dust. He was gone. The boy I raised was truly completely gone. In his place was a stranger who hated me. "Okay," I whispered, my voice a dry rattle. I lowered the phone. I looked at Tasha. The grief was still there, a crushing weight, but underneath it, for the first time, the ice was back. The cold, hard, pure rage of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Okay," I said again, my voice stronger. "He's gone. Now, you make your call. You call whoever you need to call. You tell them everything, and we burn them to the ground. And I have just been told by my only son that I am a debt he is tired of paying." I sat in the passenger seat of Tasha's rental car, the burner phone dead in my lap. The silence in the car was absolute. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the distant sound of a lawnmower, the beating of my own broken heart. He was gone. The boy I raised. The boy Althea and I loved. He didn't exist anymore. In his place was a stranger, a monster filled with a resentment so deep and so old I couldn't even recognize it. Tasha just watched me. Her face was pale, her expression a mixture of pity and a cold rising fury. She slowly reached over and tapped her iPhone, which was still on the dash. The little red recording light went out. She saved the file. "Okay," I whispered. My voice was a dry scraping sound. I cleared my throat and tried again, my voice stronger, colder. "Okay, he's gone. Now we burn them to the ground." Tasha nodded, her eyes all business. The shark was back. "He's right about one thing," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "The money is in the Cayman Islands. It's in an offshore holding account, probably shielded by 3 or 4 different shell corporations. He's right. Calling the Charlotte PD, they're useless. This is international wire fraud. This is FBI territory." So he won," I said, the despair trying to creep back in. "It's over." "No," Tasha said, her voice sharp, cutting off my pity. "He thinks he won. He's an amateur Uncle Lewis, a stupid, greedy, entitled amateur who just pulled off one lucky, sloppy move. He doesn't know how to hold the money. He's like a dog who just caught a car. And right now, he and Brittany are the 2 most terrified people on this planet. They have a $1.5 million debt to gangsters. They have my $1.2 million in a digital account they can't touch. And those gangsters, the ones who waved at us, they know exactly where they live. She was right. The image of Brittany, her face streaked with mascara, her eyes wide with primal terror, flashed in my mind. Tasha continued, her mind working the pieces, clicking into place. They're trapped. The gangsters want their money, but the money is locked away. Corey and Brittany are useless to them unless they can get that money back. We're not going to try and take the money from the Cayman's Uncle Lewis. That would take years. No, we're going to make them, Corey and his Viper wife, we're going to make them bring it right back to us. I looked at her, my mind slow, still thick with the grief from the phone call. How do we do that? We use the monsters, she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. We use their terror. We use the loan sharks. We are going to make Corey and Brittany more afraid of us than they are of them. Tasha picked up her phone, her personal phone. The first call is to the authorities, she said. But not the local cops. We call the FBI. We have a recording of an admission of guilt. We have a conspiracy to commit wire fraud. We have a confession. We have the fake doctor's name, the loan shark's address, the license plate of the Escalade. We have everything. We hand the entire case to the feds tied up in a neat little bow. They'll freeze everything. They'll issue warrants. No. The word came out of my mouth quiet, but as solid and heavy as granite. Tasha stopped. She stared at me, her finger hovering over her phone. What, Uncle Lewis? What are you talking about? This is the only way. This is the legal way. We have them cold. No, I said again, my voice stronger. I turned in my seat to face her. You're not thinking it through. You're thinking like a lawyer again. You need to think like they do, like a cornered animal. What do you mean? She asked, her eyes narrowing. You call the FBI. I said, the logic unfolding in my mind, cold and clear and terrible. The feds, what's the first thing they do, just like you said? They freeze everything. They put a global hold on that Cayman account. They issue an international warrant for the funds. That $1.2 million gets locked up. It's frozen. It can never be moved by anyone, not by us, not by Corey, not by the gangsters. When Tasha's face suddenly went pale, she saw it. Oh my God, she whispered. Yes, I said, nodding slowly. And what happens then? The loan sharks, the men in the tracksuits, they go to collect their $1.5 million, and they find out that the money, all the money, is gone, frozen by the feds, forever. What do you think they're going to do to Brittany and Corey then, when they realize they've been led on a chase and that their payment has just evaporated into a federal investigation? They'll be killed, Tasha whispered, her voice horrified. They'll be murdered. They'll be made an example of. Yes, I said. They will. And we will have been the ones who signed their death warrant. We will have been the ones who put the bullet in their heads. Tasha was shaken. She looked down at her hands. But Uncle Lewis, after what he just said to you, after what he did, he called you done. He said you owed him. Maybe they... No. I held up my hand, my calloused carpenter's hand. It wasn't shaking anymore. Don't say it. Don't even think it. I have lost my son today. I know that. But I am not a killer. I will not have his blood or her blood on my hands. That is not justice. That's just more wreckage. That's not how Althea raised me. That's not who I am. I turned and looked out the windshield of the car at the peaceful park. I felt the grief, a cold, hard stone in my gut. But it wasn't a fog anymore. It was a lens. It was a focus. I don't want them dead, Tasha, I said, my voice a low, hard rasp I didn't recognize. I want them broken. I want them to feel exactly what I feel. The fear, the panic, the helplessness. I want them to stand in that beige mansion of theirs and realize they have nothing. I looked at her, and my eyes were as hard as the steel in her own. I want them to lose the house. I want them to lose their careers. I want them to lose each other. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize their confused, senile old father has just checkmated them. I want my money back, and I want them, Corey and Brittany, to be the ones who have to give it to me begging. I want them to face Justice Tasha, not a gangster's bullet in an alley. I took a deep breath. The decision was made. We are not calling the police. Not yet. We are going to find another way. We are going to let them twist in the wind. We are going to let the loan sharks squeeze them, and we are going to be the only ones who can save them. We are going to set our own trap. And I have just made a terrible choice. I have decided not to call the police. I have decided to let my son and his wife twist in the wind, squeezed between the gangsters they owe and the trap we are about to set. Tasha just looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. She, the lawyer, the officer of the court, had just been told no by her grieving old uncle. I expected her to argue, to fight me. She just nodded, a single sharp dip of her chin. "Okay," she said. "Okay, Uncle Lewis. Your choice. Your money. Your son. We do this your way." She let out a long, slow breath, and it was like I was watching her take off her lawyer hat and put on something else. Something darker. "But you need to understand," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "if we do this, we're not just bending the law anymore. We're breaking it. We're actively interfering in a federal investigation that should be happening. We're bordering on extortion. If we get caught, I get disbarred. We could both go to jail." "They stole my life, Tasha." I said, my voice as hard as the oak I used to work with. "They called me a senile old fool. They tried to erase me. I'm 71 years old. I'm not afraid of jail. I'm afraid of them winning. I'm afraid of dying and letting them win." That cold, dangerous smile I had seen before returned to her face. It was a terrifying thing to see on my sister's daughter. "All right then, Uncle," she said. She picked up her burner phone, the one from the convenience store. "Let's light a fire." "What are you doing?" I asked as she tapped the screen. "I can't call the loan sharks. I don't have their number. And if I did, they'd never trust me." She explained, her eyes focused. "But I have a resource. A man I use sometimes for my more difficult cases. He's a private investigator, an ex-cop who got kicked off the force for being too rough. He finds things. And he knows everyone. He knows people in that world." She made the call. She didn't say her name. "It's me," she said. "I need you to pass a message, an anonymous tip, to the head of the organization that runs out of 14 McDowell Street." She listened for a moment. "I don't care how you do it. Call one of his lieutenants. Send a text to one of his bookies. I need the man at the top to get this information within the hour." She took a deep breath, and then she dictated the bait. "You write this down," she said, her voice clear and cold. "The message is this: you're being played. Corey and Brittany Hayes, they don't have your money. They just scammed an old man, $1.2 million. The money is real, but they just wired it to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. Account number..." Tasha paused and my heart stopped. She couldn't know the account. She just rattled off a string of 16 random numbers. "It doesn't matter if it's the right account," she whispered to me, her hand over the phone. "They'll believe it." She went back to the call. "But here's the problem. Their plan failed. The old man, he's gone to the feds. The FBI has been notified. I've been tipped off that a federal warrant is being drafted. The feds are flagging that Cayman account for international money laundering. They're going to seize it permanently. You have maybe 48 hours before that money is locked up forever by the U.S. government," she finished. "That's the message. Make sure he gets it, and make sure he never knows where it came from." She hung up the phone. She didn't look at me. She just sat there, breathing heavily. And what now?" I whispered. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would break a rib. "And now," she said, "we've thrown a rock at a hornet's nest. We just have to wait and see which way they fly." The silence in the car was deafening. We waited. 10 minutes. 20. We had moved the car again back to the motel. We were sitting in the hot, anonymous parking lot. "Tasha, what if this doesn't work?" I asked. "What if they don't believe it? What if they just kill them anyway? They'll believe it, she said, though her voice was tight. Why? Because it's the perfect story. It's complicated. It's specific. And it explains everything. It explains why Brittany showed up today terrified with no money. It gives them a reason for her failure. And more importantly, it gives them an enemy. Not Corey and Brittany, but a new, bigger enemy, the FBI. She was right. It was brilliant. We hadn't threatened the loan sharks. We had warned them. We had made ourselves their secret ally. We had given them a common enemy and a ticking clock. Their problem, Tasha continued, her mind racing, is no longer just that Brittany owes them money. Their problem is that their $1.5 million is about to be eaten by the federal government, locked away in an evidence locker forever. They don't care about the FBI arresting Corey and Brittany. They're gangsters. They only care about their money, and we just told them their money is about to vanish. Just as she said it, the burner phone in her lap vibrated. A text message. She grabbed it. Her eyes scanned the screen. "It's my PI," she said, her voice breathless. He did it. The message was delivered, not to a lieutenant. He knows the boss's personal lawyer. He delivered it directly. The boss got the message 5 minutes ago. "And," I said, leaning in, "and he's panicked," Tasha said, a grim smile touching her lips. "He's not scared. He's livid. He's absolutely terrified. Not of the FBI, but of his money being stuck. He doesn't care about the feds. He doesn't care about money laundering. He just cares that his 1.5 million, or our 1.2 million, whatever, is about to be frozen. Locked. Gone." The phone vibrated again. Another text. Tasha read this one and her face went pale. "Oh, God," she whispered. "What?" I demanded, my hands gripping the armrest. "Tasha, what does it say?" She just held the phone out for me to read. The text from her PI was simple. "Boss just made a call. I have a source on the inside. He just called Brittany Hayes directly." The message was explicit. He gave her 24 hours. 24 hours, I said. 24 hours for what? Tasha's eyes met mine. They were filled with a cold, terrible, triumphant light. 24 hours to unfreeze it, she said. 24 hours to stop the seizure. 24 hours to get that money out of the Cayman Islands. He doesn't care how. He doesn't care about the feds. He just wants his cash. The PI's final text came through. The threat was, "I don't care about your stories. I don't care about the FBI. You have 24 hours to get my money, in cash, back to Charlotte. If you don't, Corey will be the one explaining it to me. And he'll be doing it from the inside of a trunk." I let my head fall back against the headrest. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Corey and Brittany were in an impossible, agonizing, perfect trap. They were being hunted by gangsters who wanted $1.5 million in cash in less than 24 hours. But their money, my money, was a digital ghost locked in an offshore account thousands of miles away. The only way to save their own lives, the only way, was to move that money, to move it now, to bring that $1.2 million back to the United States, back into the American banking system where they could turn it into cash. And that, Tasha's cold, triumphant smile told me, was exactly where she wanted it to be. Back on the grid, back in her reach, back where she could finally pounce. And I am sitting in a rental car with my niece Tasha in a motel parking lot. The plan we have just formed. It is cold, it is dangerous, and it is not justice. It is revenge. My son Corey and his wife Brittany are in an impossible situation. They have 24 hours to produce $1.5 million in cash or they will be murdered by gangsters. But their only source of money, my $1.2 million, is a digital ghost in the Cayman Islands, and it's being hunted by the FBI thanks to our anonymous tip. They are trapped. And now, it's time to set the lock. "Where to?" Tasha asked. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "The bank. Do we wait for them there?" "No," I said. My voice was a low rumble. I felt calm. The grief was still there, a cold, hard rock in my gut. But the confusion, the panic, that was gone. I knew exactly what I had to do. "They're not going to the bank. Not yet. They're at home in that beige prison trying to figure out how to move that money. They're terrified. So what's the move, Uncle? I looked at her. Take me to the police. Tasha's head snapped around. What the police? But you said we agreed. If we call the feds, the money freezes and they... I didn't say the feds, I said. I didn't say the FBI. They're too big, too slow. And they'll seize the money. I said, take me to the local police. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Headquarters. Tasha just stared at me for a full 10 seconds. And then I saw it. That slow, cold, brilliant smile spread across her face. She understood. She understood the play. "Oh, Uncle Lewis," she whispered, her voice filled with a terrible newfound respect. "That is diabolical." She started the car. "I see it. I see the whole move. Let's go." 20 minutes later, we walked into the lobby of the CMPD headquarters. It was loud. It smelled like stale coffee and floor wax. I felt strangely calm. Tasha, however, looked frantic. She was acting. She was holding my elbow as if I were a frail old man she was guiding. We were directed to a small, cluttered office on the 3rd floor. A plaque on the door read, "Financial Crimes, Elder Fraud Unit." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. A man in a wrinkled suit with tired, bloodshot eyes looked up from his desk. His nameplate read, "Detective Miller." "Can I help you?" he sighed, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Tasha immediately launched into her performance. "Yes, Detective, I hope so. This is my Uncle Lewis Hayes. I'm his attorney, Tasha Williams. He insisted on coming down here. He has something he wants to say, but I need you to know, Detective, he's not well." Miller looked at me. I looked as pathetic as I could. I looked confused. "Mr. Hayes?" Miller asked, his voice flat. I leaned forward, my hands trembling. I made them tremble. "Detective," I whispered, my voice cracking. I have to confess. I've done something terrible." Miller sat up. He grabbed a pen. "What did you do, Mr. Hayes?" I'm trying to steal money," I said, the lie tasting like acid. "I'm trying to steal money from my son, Corey Hayes. He's a wonderful boy, a big finance man. And I'm trying to ruin him." Miller just frowned. "You're trying to steal from your son?" "Yes," I said, letting a tear roll down my cheek. It's a family dispute. I told people he stole from me, but it's not true. I'm just an old jealous fool. And I want to take his money. I'm trying to get into his bank accounts." Miller looked at Tasha, completely bewildered. Tasha jumped in right on cue, her voice a pitch-perfect imitation of a frantic, embarrassed lawyer. "Detective, please," she said, grabbing my arm. "This is exactly what I was talking about. My uncle, he's 71. He just lost his wife. He has been diagnosed with dementia." She choked on the word. "He's confused. He's paranoid. He's making up these terrible, elaborate stories. He doesn't know what he's saying. Uncle Lewis, please," she said, turning to me. "We talked about this. You wanted to retract your statement. Remember, you wanted to go home." I just looked at Miller, my eyes wide and confused. I don't remember." Detective Miller just stared. He looked at me, the confused old man. Then he looked at Tasha, the panicked lawyer. He was a detective. He saw this every day. He saw families tearing each other apart over money. And he wasn't stupid. He could see the sharp, intelligent, furious mind behind my confused eyes. He could see the cold, calculating precision behind Tasha's panic. He saw the real con. He understood in that instant that an elder fraud was being committed, just in reverse. And Tasha had just handed him the legal, ironclad justification to act. Miller leaned back in his chair. He let out a long, slow sigh. He looked at Tasha, and a tiny spark of understanding passed between them. "Ma'am, Miss Williams," he said, his voice now heavy with official procedure. "I appreciate your concern, but your uncle, your client, has just sat in my office and confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud. He has stated on the record that he is actively trying to gain access to his son's accounts." He turned to me. Mr. Hayes, I can't just, let you go. I have a duty to protect the potential victim in this situation. Your son, Mr. Corey Hayes." He turned to his computer. His fingers began to type. "In order to protect your son," he said, his voice a flat monotone, "and to prevent your confused attempts to access his finances, I have no choice but to place an immediate 24-hour administrative freeze on all of Mr. Corey Hayes' known domestic accounts, pending a full investigation into your claims, Mr. Hayes." Tasha was watching her phone, her personal phone. Her leg was bouncing under the table. Miller's fingers moved. He clicked. He typed. He hit the enter key with a final decisive thud. "It's done," he said. "All his assets at Bank of America are frozen. He's protected from you." At that exact second, Tasha's phone, which was sitting on her lap, vibrated. Once. She looked down at it. She didn't smile, but her eyes were blazing. She looked up at me and she gave me the smallest, most imperceptible nod. She slid the phone across the desk, keeping it below Miller's line of sight. It was a text from her source, her PI, the one with the contact inside the bank. The text read, "It's moving, pending transaction. 1.2 M USD wire from Cayman Trust, inbound to frozen account. They're in, they're trapped." Corey and Brittany, in their absolute life-ending panic, had done it. They had pulled the trigger. They had initiated the transfer. They were moving my $1.2 million, my entire life, back from the Cayman Islands, and right into a steel cage. A cage I had just built, and I am sitting in the office of a Bank of America branch manager. Tasha is beside me. Detective Miller is standing by the door, and we are all waiting. Tasha's phone, sitting on the manager's desk, vibrated once. A text from her PI, who was parked across the street. "Black BMW, just pulled in. They're running." "They're here," Tasha said, her voice calm. Detective Miller just nodded, his face grim. "Showtime, Mr. Hayes." The doors to the manager's office were made of frosted glass. I could see two shapes, blurred and frantic, burst into the bank lobby. Then I heard him. My son. His voice wasn't the cold, arrogant hiss from the phone call. It was a high-pitched, panicked scream of pure terror. "My money! Where is my money?" We heard a teller's terrified, muffled voice. "Sir, I can't. The account is—" "What do you mean it's frozen?" Corey shrieked. The sound was animal. "I am Corey Hayes. That is my account. You unfreeze it. You unfreeze it right now." "Sir, you have to be calm." "I will not be calm," he roared. I have a deadline. You don't understand. You are ruining me. Get me a manager. Get me someone who can fix this." And then another sound. A sound that cut right through Corey's screaming. It was Brittany. She just collapsed. I heard a thud and then a wail. A long, hopeless animal wail of pure, abject terror. "We're dead," she shrieked. Her voice was raw. "Oh my God, Corey, we're dead. He's going to kill us. He's going to kill us. It's over. He's going to find us, and he's going to kill us." The entire bank lobby had gone silent. There was only the sound of my daughter-in-law sobbing hysterically on the marble floor and my son breathing like a dying bull. Detective Miller looked at me. He nodded. I stood up. My old knees ached, but I stood up tall. I was not the confused old man from his office. I was not the victim who crawled out of a bathroom window. I was a father, and I was about to end this. Detective Miller opened the door. I walked out of the office, Tasha right behind me and Miller following, his hand resting lightly on his hip. The lobby was frozen. Tellers and customers were staring. Brittany was a heap on the floor sobbing. And Corey, my son. He was standing at the teller window, his face a mask of sweat and terror, his expensive suit rumpled. He turned, he saw me, his mouth fell open, the blood drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was a child's voice, small, lost. I just walked toward him, my old dress shoes clicking on the marble. I didn't stop until I was standing right in front of him. I looked into his eyes. The arrogance was gone. The resentment was gone. There was only panic. "You don't call me Dad." I said, my voice low and cold and perfectly clear. It cut through the silence of the bank. You call me he? Corey's eyes widened. He had no idea what I was talking about. I heard you, I said. In the alley, outside the pub. You were on the phone with your wife. You said, he knows. Not dad. Not my father. Just he. An object. A problem to be managed. I... He stammered, his mind racing, trying to catch up. Dad, what are you doing here? What did you do? He looked at the frozen teller screen. What did you do to my account? And then I delivered the checkmate, the final killing move. Your account, I said. That's not what I told the police. I nodded back at Detective Miller, who was watching us, his expression unreadable. I went to the police this morning, son, I said, and I let my voice fill with that fake, confused tremor. I confessed. I told them that a confused, senile 71-year-old man, was trying to steal money from my loving, successful son, from you. Corey's face. It was a mask of utter, complete, agonizing disbelief. He couldn't process the words. I leaned in closer. The detective. He was just doing his job, Corey. He had to protect you. From me. So he did the only thing he could do. He put a freeze on your account to keep your money safe from your Lou Lan old father. He got it. In that one horrible second, he finally truly got it. He saw the whole trap. He saw the bait. He saw the anonymous tip. He saw the police. He saw me. His legs buckled. He grabbed the counter to hold himself up. He wasn't a fund manager. He wasn't an arrogant son. He was just a terrified little boy who had been caught. You, he whispered, his voice choking. The money. The wire. It's in there. The gangsters. They're going to kill us. Dad, please, you have to undo it. Please. I just looked at him. I felt nothing. Just a cold, vast, empty space where my love for him used to be. So, I said, my voice flat, you have two choices. He looked up, his eyes begging. One, I said, holding up a single calloused finger. You confess right here, right now. You tell Detective Miller everything. You tell him about the fake POA. You tell him about the fake doctor. You tell him you stole my $1.2 million. You will go to jail. You will be disbarred. You will lose this house. You will lose everything. But the account will be unfrozen. The money will be returned to me, and I will pay your wife's debt. I will save your lives. I paused. Or two. I looked at Brittany, who had stopped crying and was staring at me, her face a mask of horror. You keep up the act, I said. You stay silent. You stick to your story, that I'm a confused old man. Detective Miller continues his investigation. The money stays frozen indefinitely, and you two, you go home. You lock your doors. And you personally explain to those men in the tracksuits why you don't have their money. Choose. Right now, son, save your life, or save your lie. You can't have both. And my son chose to save his life. Faced with the choice between prison and a loan shark's trunk, Corey, he crumbled. Right there in the bank lobby in front of Detective Miller, he confessed to everything. The fake power of attorney, the fake doctor, the wire fraud, everything. Brittany, seeing her last line of defense evaporate, she sang like a canary. She told them all about the loan sharks, the gambling, the embezzlement. Tasha, brilliant Tasha, ensured my money, my $1.2 million, was returned to my name. And the first thing I did, I had her pay them, the gangsters, the full $1.5 million debt. Not for Brittany's sake, not for Corey's, but for my sake. I told Tasha, I will not have their blood on my hands. I will not have that blood on my money. Corey received a suspended sentence, 5 years of probation. His financial licenses were revoked permanently. His career, his entire life was over. He and Brittany, they are facing a mountain of civil lawsuits from the gallery. They lost the beige mansion. They lost everything. I went home, Back to Atlanta. I bought a small, quiet apartment, a place with good light for one man. Tasha helped me set up a new trust, an ironclad, untouchable trust. She's the executor. No one will ever touch what I've built again. I am 71 years old. I lost my son that day in the bank. I know that. But I found something too. I found my dignity. The dignity Althea always saw in me. I learned the hardest lesson of my life, that love is not just about sacrifice. Sometimes love is about setting boundaries. And my boundaries from this day forward are forged in steel. This ordeal taught me a painful, vital truth. Trust should not be a blindfold. My love for my son Corey made me ignore the whispers of my own intuition, and worse, the warnings of my wise wife Althea. She saw the hungry look in Brittany's eyes. She questioned the business trips to casinos. I dismissed her worries as being old-fashioned, just to keep the peace. I learned that keeping the peace at the cost of truth is not peace at all. It is simply delaying the inevitable war. True strength means listening to the uncomfortable truths, especially from those who love you, before it's too late. Have you ever ignored a red flag about someone only to wish you had listened? Share your experience in the comments below.